The new driver watched his boss's strange behavior every morning. One morning, he decided to discreetly follow his boss and discovered a secret that, for Michael, the new job as a private driver seemed like the perfect chance to leave the past behind. But what was supposed to be a calm routine turns into a series of dark mysteries. His boss, the influential Mr. Donovan, harbors secrets that not even power can control. When Michael decides to follow his instincts, he discovers that danger is closer than he imagines. Something is about to be uncovered, and every second counts. Are you ready to find out what really happens behind the appearances? What he sees will change everything. Michael always had a keen eye for the world around him. It was a legacy from the years he spent as a truck driver, crossing lonely roads and watching landscapes slowly change. He was a man who valued control, something the road provided him until the day everything changed. An accident, a miscalculation, and Michael found himself unable to drive like before. He felt lost, as if the purpose the road gave him had been brutally taken away. When the job offer as a private driver appeared, Michael was at a low point. It wasn't just about finding a job. It was about finding a new direction in his life. The ad was simple and mysterious, but the employer's name immediately caught his attention. Mr. Donovan, one of the most influential businessmen in San Francisco. There was something intriguing about that name, something that sparked curiosity in Michael, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Mr. Donovan was the embodiment of power. From the first time Michael saw him, he knew he was in the presence of someone who controlled every aspect of his life with near-military precision. The man exuded control in everything he did, whether in his speech or in the way he conducted business. However, behind that impenetrable facade, Michael noticed something others seemed to ignore. A look that carried deep secrets, a burden that seemed ever-present. Michael's routine soon aligned with Mr. Donovan's. He arrived every morning in front of the imposing mansion, patiently waiting to take his boss to the office. Afternoons were marked by an almost disturbing quietness as Michael sat in the car, lost in thought. However, something disrupted the perfection of that meticulous routine: the mysterious Wednesday outings. On those days, Donovan left home earlier than usual, with a worried expression that Michael never saw at other times. Michael's curiosity, already piqued by Donovan's name, was now in full swing. He couldn't ignore the unusual outings, especially when he saw the look on Mr. Donovan's face upon his return. There was something dark about those Wednesdays, something that didn't fit the image of control Donovan projected. Michael began to observe every detail with even more attention, trying to decipher what was causing that change in behavior. Over time, Michael's curiosity turned into growing concern. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. The Wednesday mystery became an obsession, something he felt compelled to solve. Deep down, Michael knew he was approaching something dangerous, but he also felt that uncovering that mystery could give him a new purpose, something he so desperately needed after the accident. On a Wednesday morning, while waiting for Donovan to leave, Michael made a decision that would change everything. If the strange behavior continued, he would find out what was happening. He was aware of the risks. He knew he could lose his job or worse, but his instinct urged him forward. Something inside him told him that by uncovering Donovan's secret, he could finally find a new reason to move on. When Donovan left earlier than usual, Michael was prepared. He kept a safe distance while following the car through the streets of San Francisco. The route seemed normal at first, but soon Donovan took a different path, entering a neighborhood Michael didn't recognize. The area was remote, the streets narrower, and the surroundings grew increasingly desolate. With each turn, Michael's heart beat faster, fueled by both adrenaline and uncertainty. Finally, Donovan parked in front of a discreet building. Michael, holding his breath, watched as his boss got out of the car and entered the building. That moment seemed to stretch into eternity. Michael knew this was the key to understanding what was happening. He needed to find out what Donovan was doing there, but he also knew that any misstep could ruin everything. Still, he was determined to see it through. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a matter of finding a purpose, something to give meaning to the new life he was trying to build. Michael was at the edge of his patience and courage as he watched Donovan enter the building. Something in the air indicated that this place, hidden in a forgotten corner of the city, held deep secrets. The contrast between Donovan's controlled appearance and the uncomfortable location was unsettling. Michael felt he was about to discover something that could change everything, but the fear of the unknown also began to grow within him. For a few minutes, Michael stayed in the shadows, watching the building's entrance. There was something almost tangible in the tension he felt, as if the very environment was charged with an imminent danger. The decision to move forward or retreat hovered over him like a double-edged sword. He knew any mistake could be fatal, but the curiosity that had guided him from the start was now a necessity. He needed to know the truth no matter the cost. Finally, taking a deep breath, Michael decided to take the risk. He walked towards the building with light steps, trying to blend into the darkness around him. Every movement was calculated, every sound amplified by the eerie silence. As he approached the entrance, he noticed the door was slightly ajar, as if the building was waiting for him, inviting him in. The silence inside was almost deafening, as if each wall hid a secret that refused to be revealed. Michael hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision he was about to make. A thought crossed his mind. He was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. But the image of Donovan's worried face that morning made him press on. He knew that if there was any mystery to be uncovered, this was the moment. With a slow, calculated movement, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The hallway that stretched before him was narrow and dimly lit, with worn walls that seemed to tell stories from other times. Michael walked slowly, each step echoing softly on the cold tile floor. Further ahead, a partially open door let out a faint light and the muffled sound of voices. Michael paused, leaning in to listen better. Fear and adrenaline mixed in his chest, while every fiber of his being told him to be careful. Inside the room, Donovan's voice was clear, but the tone was different from what Michael was used to. The usual confidence was absent, replaced by urgency, a tone of someone cornered, trying to control a situation that threatened to unravel at any moment. Michael could hear fragments of the conversation. Words like security, threat, and leak floated to him, but without context, they left more questions than answers. Michael's mind was racing. He knew whatever it was big. Big enough to make Donovan break his meticulous routine, to bring him to that forgotten place and meet with people who, apparently, shared the same fear. The situation was more serious than he had imagined, and the fear he felt deep in his stomach grew with each passing second. Carefully, Michael moved closer to the door, peering through the narrow gap. Inside the room, Donovan was surrounded by 3 men and a woman, all dressed formally. Despite their professional appearance, there was something dark in the room's atmosphere. Their expressions were tense, their gazes distrustful, as if each knew they were treading on dangerous ground. Michael realized these were more than just colleagues. They were accomplices in something big. What Michael saw next left him even more intrigued. One of the men, who seemed to be the leader of the group, handed Donovan a manila envelope. Donovan held it firmly, but Michael noticed the slight tremor in his hands. He opened the envelope and pulled out a set of documents, his eyes narrowing as he read the content. The room was heavy with silence, each second dragging as everyone waited for Donovan's reaction. When he finally looked up, Michael could see the fear in his boss's eyes, something he had never witnessed before. Donovan closed the envelope and let out a deep sigh, as if about to make a difficult decision. The words that followed, though spoken in a controlled tone, were laden with desperate determination. "This needs to be resolved now. We can't wait any longer. The company's security is at stake, and if this leaks, Donovan's words were cut off by the sound of a cell phone ringing. One of the men quickly answered, stepping away for a brief conversation. When he returned, his face was pale. He whispered something in Donovan's ear, and his boss's expression grew even darker. Michael realized he was getting involved in something much bigger than he had imagined. This wasn't just an inconvenient secret. It was something that could change everything. He slowly backed away, making no noise, and left the building with his heart racing. He felt he was on the brink of a dangerous discovery, and that from that moment on, his life would never be the same. Outside, Michael got into the car and sat for a few minutes, trying to process everything he had witnessed. The idea that his boss was involved in something so dangerous and complex left him in shock. However, instead of retreating, Michael felt a new determination growing inside him. He knew he needed to act, but also that he had to be extremely cautious. Donovan was a powerful man, but the truth Michael had glimpsed in that building could bring down even the strongest of empires. Back behind the wheel, Michael felt a whirlwind of thoughts churning in his mind. What he had witnessed in the abandoned building was not something that could be ignored. The fear in Donovan's eyes, something he never expected to see, was now an image etched in his memory. Michael knew he was dealing with something big, something that exceeded the bounds of immediate comprehension. But he couldn't just walk away, not after seeing that. As he drove through the deserted streets of the city, Michael tried to piece together the puzzle. The unusual Wednesdays, the secret meeting, the mysterious envelope, and the tension between Donovan and his associates. Each detail, each expression, and each word heard in that dark room now seemed to weave together into an intricate web of secrets and lies. He knew he couldn't trust anyone, that appearances could be deceiving, and that danger lurked where he least expected. Michael decided he couldn't stop there. Donovan was involved in something serious, something that threatened not just his company but probably his own life. There was only one thing to do: follow the clues, even if it meant diving deeper into a dangerous game. He knew that if he wanted to help his boss, he had to act quickly before it was too late. That very night, Michael began investigating Donovan's company's past. Using the observation skills he had developed over the years on the road, he sifted through old files, news buried in time, anything that could shed some light on what was happening. He spent sleepless nights in front of the computer, analyzing data, comparing information, trying to understand what was going on behind the imposing facade of the company. It was then that he discovered the first link in the chain, a technological incident of catastrophic proportions that nearly destroyed the company's reputation years ago. At the time, the media quickly covered up the case, and the company recovered, but Michael realized that was just the tip of the iceberg. What caught Michael's attention the most was the fact that, at the time, the incident had been quickly suppressed by the media, as if powerful forces were working behind the scenes to ensure the truth never came to light. What appeared to be just a seemingly insignificant technological error, in reality, seemed to hide something much more sinister. The incident was directly related to a failure in the company's cybersecurity systems, something that, if not controlled, could have caused immense damage. But why was this resurfacing now? And why did Donovan, a man so careful, seem to be involved in something that threatened his own creation? Michael didn't have all the answers, but he was starting to piece together the puzzle. Donovan wasn't just dealing with a problem from the past. He seemed to be in the middle of a secret investigation, something he couldn't share with anyone he trusted. The meeting in the deserted building wasn't just a business conversation. It was a desperate attempt to solve a problem that, if not contained, could destroy everything Donovan had built. The following weeks were marked by constant vigilance. Michael, not knowing who could be involved, kept his discoveries to himself but continued to track Donovan's movements. He observed him every Wednesday, mentally recording every detail, every deviation from routine, every exchange of looks between Donovan and those he met with. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense, and Michael felt the weight of the consequences of his actions mounting daily. Finally, on one of those Wednesdays, Michael decided to follow Donovan to the meeting place, but this time without hiding. He needed answers and knew he could only get them if he took action. When Donovan entered the building, Michael waited a few minutes and followed his boss inside. This time, he didn't hide behind the door but entered the room, facing Donovan and his mysterious associates. The shock on Donovan's face was evident, but he quickly recovered, regaining control of the situation. Michael, on the other hand, felt the weight of the moment, knowing he was crossing a line that wouldn't allow a return. But the truth, whatever it was, needed to come out. "Michael," Donovan began, his voice laden with authority but also with a hint of something more, perhaps resignation. "You shouldn't be here." Michael maintained his composure, knowing this was his chance to get the answers he had been seeking. "Mr. Donovan, I know something very serious is going on. I saw the fear in your eyes, and I know you don't trust anyone anymore. But I'm here, and I want to help." A tense silence filled the room as Donovan considered Michael's words. What was about to come would change the course of everything, and they both knew it. Donovan looked at the others in the room, then at Michael, and finally, as if making a decision at that very moment, he spoke. "If you knew the gravity of the situation, you'd understand why there's been so much secrecy. But perhaps it's too late to turn back now." The tension in the room was almost palpable. Michael felt he was about to cross a line of no return, a line that separated ignorance from truth, but also safety from danger. Donovan looked at him with a mix of resignation and evaluation, as if weighing the consequences of pulling Michael even deeper into the whirlwind forming around his life and company. "Michael," Donovan finally said, his voice low, weighted with the burden of what was to come. "You want to help, and perhaps I have no choice but to trust you. But understand this, what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. There is no one else I can trust. And if this leaks, not only my company but lives may be at risk." Michael nodded, feeling the gravity of Donovan's words. He was ready to listen, even knowing that what was about to be revealed could put him on a path of no return. Donovan began to explain, his voice maintaining a controlled tone but with an underlying tension. He recounted the true nature of the incident years ago, a technological disaster that wasn't just a common error but the result of internal sabotage. Someone within the company had deliberately compromised the cybersecurity systems, nearly destroying everything Donovan had built. The company had recovered, at least on the surface, but the scars of that incident remained, hidden, never fully healed. Donovan had his suspicions but never managed to gather enough evidence to expose those responsible. And that's when the conspiracy really began to unfold. In recent months, Donovan began noticing patterns similar to those of the previous incident. Small details, almost imperceptible, that indicated someone was again manipulating the company's systems, but this time more subtly, more dangerously. He started investigating on his own, trusting no one within the organization, fearing the conspirators were closer than he imagined. Michael listened intently, his stomach twisting as the puzzle pieces began to fit together. Donovan was dealing with a corporate espionage network, something that not only put the company at risk but also involved powerful external interests. The worst part, the conspiracy seemed to have infiltrated the highest levels of the organization. "The head of cybersecurity," Donovan said, with a tone of bitterness Michael had never heard before. "He's the main suspect, a man I trusted with the company's most important secrets. But now I'm almost certain he's behind all this. He has the resources, the access, and the coldness needed to manipulate everything without raising suspicion." Michael felt a chill hearing this. The head of cybersecurity was a man he knew only by sight, someone who always kept his distance but radiated an aura of competence and power. Now, the thought that this man was behind such a sinister conspiracy made Michael's stomach knot. Donovan continued, "He's not alone, of course. There are others involved, both inside and outside the company. But he's the key. If we can gather enough evidence against him, The rest will collapse like a house of cards. But this is where things get dangerous, Michael. He's meticulous, and any misstep could cost us dearly. Michael felt the weight of what was being revealed. Donovan was in a critical situation, surrounded by invisible enemies, and Michael had been dragged into the eye of the storm. He knew that from that moment on, his life would never be the same. He was on a path that could lead him to confront forces far beyond his understanding. But there was no turning back now. "I need your help," Donovan said, his gaze fixed on Michael, as if trying to read his soul. "We need to gather the evidence. We need to unmask them before they do something irreversible. You may not have experience in this area, but you have something many here have lost: loyalty and courage." Michael knew there was no choice. He had gotten too involved to turn back, and now, Donovan's safety and the company's future depended on him. But at the same time, he felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that one mistake could be costly. He felt a chill down his spine at the thought of the consequences, but there was something stronger inside him, something that drove him forward. "I'm with you, Mr. Donovan," Michael finally responded, his voice firm but laden with emotion. "We'll take down this conspiracy, whatever it takes." Michael felt the weight of the decision he had just made. Donovan's words still echoed in his mind as he left the building in the dead of night. He knew there was no turning back. He had crossed a line, and now he was involved in a plot far bigger than anything he could have imagined. Donovan's company was in danger, and the only way to save it was to confront the conspiracy head-on, regardless of the consequences. That night, Michael barely slept. Every sound, every shadow that moved outside the window seemed laden with invisible threats. He knew that from that moment on, he would have to be extremely cautious. The head of cybersecurity, the man Donovan had blindly trusted, was now the main suspect, and Michael knew this man was dangerous. Every step would have to be calculated, every move executed with precision to avoid detection. In the days that followed, Michael and Donovan began to devise a plan. They couldn't trust anyone within the company, not even the closest employees. The conspiracy was deeply rooted, and any slip-up could alert the traitors. Michael used all his cunning and experience in observation, developed over years on the road, to follow the clues that could incriminate the head of security. Donovan, for his part, used his contacts outside the company to discreetly gather information. Every move had to be made in the shadows, away from the prying eyes of the conspirators. They were playing a dangerous game, where any mistake could cost them their lives. Michael felt the pressure mounting each day, but there was a determination within him that kept him steady. He wouldn't let these men destroy what Donovan had built, and he wouldn't let his own loyalty be in vain. Finally, the moment to act arrived. Michael had managed to gather enough evidence to implicate the head of security, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. They needed irrefutable proof, something that left no doubt about the traitor's guilt. Michael and Donovan devised an audacious plan to expose the culprits, a plan that, if successful, would dismantle the conspiracy once and for all. On the night the plan was to be executed, Michael felt the weight of every decision he had made up to that point. He knew that if something went wrong, there would be no second chance. Donovan trusted him, and that trust was all Michael needed to move forward. They had prepared everything meticulously, but still, there was a sense that something could go wrong. It was a risk they were both willing to take. Michael entered the company that night, his heart racing but his mind focused. Donovan had created a distraction, something to divert the conspirators' attention while Michael executed the most dangerous part of the plan, infiltrating the company's cybersecurity system and collecting the necessary evidence to incriminate the head of security. He knew he wouldn't have much time, that every second counted. As Michael worked quickly on the systems, he felt the tension rising with every keystroke. He knew his actions were being monitored, that at any moment he could be discovered. But he continued, knowing there was no other option. When he finally accessed the necessary files, a silent alarm went off in his mind. He knew he had been discovered, Michael acted quickly, transferring the evidence to an external device and erasing his tracks as best he could. But before he could finish, the server room door burst open. The head of security was there, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on Michael. The moment Michael had feared had arrived. "I knew you were involved in this, Michael," the head of security said, a sinister smile on his face. "But did you really think you could fool me?" Michael felt the sweat drip down his neck, but he kept calm. "You underestimated loyalty, something you seem not to understand," he replied, discreetly activating a command in the system. The head of security took a step forward, his expression hardening. "You have no idea what's going on here. Donovan is finished, and you're going down with him." But before he could act, a series of alarms sounded throughout the company. Donovan had put the last part of the plan into action. A live broadcast of all the evidence Michael had collected, directly to the authorities and the media. In an instant, the whole world would see the truth. The head of security froze, realizing too late what had happened. Michael, taking advantage of the distraction, disarmed him and quickly left the room, running toward the exit. The plan had worked, but not without risks. He knew there was still much to be done, but at that moment, they had managed to turn the tables. Donovan was waiting outside, his eyes meeting Michael's with a look of relief and gratitude. "We did it," Donovan said, his voice laden with emotion. "They're finished." The night had been long, but for Michael and Donovan, it felt as if time had stood still. The plan had been successful, but the tension in the air was still thick. The risk they had taken had left deep marks, and they both knew that while they had dismantled the conspiracy, the consequences of that act were not yet fully clear. Michael, feeling the weight of what had just happened, looked at Donovan, waiting for the next move. They didn't have much time. The authorities were on their way, and with them would come the inevitable storm of questions and investigations. Donovan, always the man of quick and calculated actions, seemed momentarily lost in thought. There was a weariness in his eyes that Michael had never noticed before. A fatigue that didn't just come from the battle they had just won, but from years of vigilance, suspicions, and pressures that had finally culminated in that night. "Michael," Donovan began, his voice laden with a gravity that made Michael straighten up. "You did more for me tonight than anyone else could have done. But there's something you need to know, something that could change everything." Michael felt a knot form in his stomach. He thought he already knew everything, that the truth had been exposed. But Donovan's words suggested there was more, something he wasn't prepared to hear. Donovan paused, as if gathering the courage to continue. "I knew about the conspiracy for longer than I let on," he finally said, his eyes fixed on Michael, studying every reaction. "Since the technological incident years ago, I suspected there was betrayal within my own company. I couldn't prove anything at the time, but I kept monitoring, investigating in secret." Michael didn't know what to say. Part of him was surprised, but another part had already expected something like this. Donovan was a meticulous man, always one step ahead. Still, the revelation left him unsettled. "I used this conspiracy against them," Donovan continued, now with a frankness that Michael rarely saw in him. "I knew that if I let them believe they were in control, they would fully reveal themselves. I needed them to believe they were winning so that everyone involved would show their true faces. And that's what happened." Michael absorbed every word, beginning to understand the depth of Donovan's strategy. The plan had been much more complex than he imagined. Donovan wasn't just reacting to a threat. He had been manipulating the situation from the start, guiding the conspirators into the trap he had set. "But there was a risk," Donovan said, his voice lowering. "The risk that you would get caught in the middle of this, that your life would be destroyed by something I had initiated. I played a dangerous game, Michael, and you ended up being an essential piece in making everything work. But I needed you to be on my side without knowing what was really going on, so that your reactions would be genuine, so they wouldn't suspect anything." Michael felt a mix of emotions. He had trusted Donovan. He had risked everything to help him, and now he found out that, in a way, he had been manipulated too. But at the same time, he understood that without that strategy, they might never have exposed the culprits. "So, all of this was part of your plan," Michael said slowly, trying to process the revelation. "I was a piece in your game." Donovan shook his head, his expression serious. "You were more than that, Michael. You were the only one I could trust to do the right thing, even without knowing the whole truth. And for that, I owe you more than I can express." The silence that followed was heavy but also brought a certain relief. Michael knew that what they had done was dangerous, risky, but also necessary. They had faced the darkness together and come out the other side, though marked by the experience. The flashing lights of police patrols began to appear in the distance, and Donovan gave Michael one last look. "Now it's time to face the consequences," he said with a renewed firmness. "But don't worry. I'll make sure you come out of this clean. You deserve to start over without this shadow following you." Michael didn't respond immediately, just nodded. There was a weariness in his bones, but also a sense of duty fulfilled. He knew life would never be the same after that night, but he also knew he had done the right thing, even if the path had been tortuous. When the authorities arrived, Donovan handed over the evidence, and Michael stood by his side, silently observing as justice finally began to be served. The truth had come to light, but not without a cost. They had dismantled the conspiracy, but the scars from that confrontation would stay with them forever. In the end, when all was said and done, Donovan turned to Michael, and with a simple gesture of gratitude, acknowledged the sacrifice they had both made. Michael knew this was the last time he would see Donovan as the controlled, relentless man he knew. There was a humanity there, a vulnerability he never expected to witness. Michael gave one last nod and walked away, knowing that although the chapter of that night was closed, its impact would echo for a long time in their lives.